has a new leader. I know that might not seem earth-shattering news because they had a new one in September, didn't they? She lasted 18 days. Paul Nuttall is the new leader of UKIP. He wants to take votes from Labour. I wonder how well positioned UKIP are to do just that. We're going to find out in a minute, but I also want to hear your calls. Are you a Labour voter attracted by UKIP? Paul Nuttall, new leader of UKIP, welcome to the programme.
Thanks, Ian.
Now, you can watch us on Facebook Live on the LBC Facebook page. What does success look like for your leadership, Paul? To last more than 18 days, or have you got more ambition than that?
I've got slightly more ambition than that. The first thing that I have to do is to unify the party, bring the factions together, and people must sit down and say bygones are bygones. The past is the past, and I've got a mandate to do it. I've just received today the biggest mandate that this party has ever given anybody. People have bought into the idea of unity because they know that UKIP has to stay on the pitch to ensure that Brexit really does mean Brexit and not some sort of mealy-mouthed version. Not only that, there are open goals in British politics today, particularly in Labour Party constituencies, and I believe we can go in and park our tanks on their lawn.
Well, let's come to that in a moment. But let's look at the vote that you got, which you're right, a 62% mandate. That's more than Jeremy Corbyn. I
63%.
Was it 63%? Yeah. Well, let's not fall out over
Okay.
1%. But your membership is hemorrhaging. You only had a 47% turnout. What does it say about a party's leadership election where only 47% of its members decide to take part?
Yeah, I mean, we've lost members since the referendum, and there was a big number of people leaving in July. But that has now become a trickle. There isn't many people leaving UKIP at the moment, and I suspect as a result of me coming to leadership that the membership will rise again. What does it mean that only 47% of members turned out? Well, do you know, we only had a leadership election a couple of months ago, and I think people are pretty fatigued with it all. They just want it over. What they want is clear leadership. They've had enough of the infighting. And look, people do not vote, join or donate to divided parties, and the first thing I've got to do now between today and Christmas is to ensure that everyone comes together, we all sing off the same hymn sheet, and we all move UKIP forward.
Is UKIP suffering an existential crisis financially? Because according to the latest donation figures, you only received, or UKIP only received £43,000 in the last figures. The BNP, which has no elected representatives in the country any longer, received double that, 86,000. What does that tell us?
Well, I think the BNP donation came from one person. It was left in a will. That only counts for large donations. Our party, believe it or not, and this don't believe what you read in the papers, is financially secure, and I have a commitment from the party's biggest donors that going forward the party will be well financed.
Haven't you been thrown out of your offices though for non-payment of rent?
That I don't know. This obviously took place before I came to the leadership. This wasn't on my watch. I don't think that we've been thrown out of our offices. We don't have an office in London at the moment. We do have our head office down in Devon, but we're actively looking for one as I speak.
Aaron Banks has been a man who's donated a lot of money to UKIP over the last 18 months or so. He doesn't seem particularly impressed by the party at the moment. I think he's tweeted today that he's rather fed up with UKIP. How can you win the likes of him round? Or maybe you don't want to.
Well, I had a long conversation with Aaron last week at Nigel's Bash at the Ritz, and we're going to speak either between now and Christmas or early in the new year. I hope Aaron comes on board. You know, he's a good guy, he's a nice bloke, and I think
he's not one of the donors that you just referred to as are going to keep the party going over the next few months.
No, he's not. But we have huge donors as well. I mean, Aaron isn't the be all and end all when it comes to UKIP going forward financially, but I want all donors on board because everyone can help. And I know Aaron, for example, certainly buys into my idea that I want to create a working class movement, and he also buys into my vision that we will become a party that represents England.
Now, let's move on to that, how you can attract voters from Labour. In some ways, because you are from the north of England, transparently you're from the north of England.
You would have guessed.
Well, indeed. And I say that, hopefully say that in a non-patronising way, but you are Labour's worst nightmare come true in some ways, aren't you?
Well, so I keep being told, but, you know, I just don't want to focus on votes in the north that are working class communities. up and down the country, in the south, in the north, in the east and in the west. And what we need to do when it comes to the Labour Party is we need to speak about the things that they have neglected. So they're very comfortable, talking about issues like Palestine and fair trade and climate change. But they don't want to really focus on the issues that matter to people on doorsteps. Immigration, crime, aspiration, ensuring that working class kids have the same opportunities as middle class kids, looking after our military, looking after our veterans, ensuring that the foreign aid budget is slashed and that money is then invested into the National Health Service and looking after British people. They're the kinds of things that we'll be talking about, and they're the kinds of things that resonate in working class communities.
I was talking to Diane Abbott on the programme last week, and she talked about UKIP. She said this. She said some of them, when you look at the UKIP vote in areas where you used to have a BNP vote, you can see that UKIP has swallowed up that BNP vote. The BNP no longer figures. Is she right?
Look, the fact is,
that almost sounded like a yes.
We destroyed the BNP, okay? And there is the British political establishment should thank, in a way, Nigel Farage and myself for ensuring that we've cast aside the far right in British politics. And there was a number of people who went and voted BNP, and look, not in insignificant numbers. The BNP got 1 million votes in 2009, got 2 MEPs elected to the European Parliament. But hang on, let me finish. Okay. Had about 300 councillors up and down the country. That has all gone. Now, not all of those people who voted BNP were racists. They were just people who were desperate and felt as if they had nothing else to turn to. There will be a small percentage of them who are out-and-out Nazis, and we don't want their votes. But those people who are desperate now have a legitimate voice to turn to, and that was UKIP.
But you would be quite happy to accept that you have absorbed a lot of those million votes?
I would. Look, as I said, the vast majority of people who went out and voted BNP, Ian, were not racist. They were people who were desperate and felt as if they had nowhere else to turn. They do now. They don't have a far-right party. What they have is UKIP, a sensible, common-sense party that is patriotic, but certainly isn't far-right.
Who are you closer to, Nigel Farage or Suzanne Evans?
Ideologically.
Ideologically, personally, however you like. Because that I think, is how a lot of people look at UKIP now. Sort of, are you going to carry on the Farage agenda, or are you going to absorb a lot of what Suzanne Evans has been saying? You like Suzanne Evans. You were in the studio with her. You seem to get on very well with her. Well, but she's as divisive in your party as Nigel Farage.
And look, I was on the platform with Nigel today, and I get on with both of them. Ideologically, there is no difference ideologically between Nigel Farage and Suzanne Evans and Douglas Carswell.
Seriously?
I'm absolutely serious. None of the differences in UKIP, this is the insane bit about this, none of the differences in UKIP have been ideological. It's personality clashes. And people have just got to come together now and understand that the cause is bigger than any personality.
But you see, even today, Nigel Farage, I read that he was quoted as saying he was surprised Suzanne Evans even got 19% of the vote, which is a fairly disparaging thing to say to someone who had basically suffered quite a humiliating defeat.
Look, Suzanne is a very talented woman, and I endeavour to build a team of all talent.
And she will be in your team.
And going forward, Suzanne Evans will play a role in UKIP, as will Nigel Farage. Okay, I don't want Nigel Farage in the background. I want Nigel Farage front of house. I want him on the airwaves. I want him in the TV studios, because he brings us a lot of publicity. He ensures that UKIP stays in the news. And look, I'm not threatened by Nigel in any way, shape or form. I was his deputy for 6 years. I was the chairman for 2 years before that. In many ways, I'm the natural successor. And I'm pretty comfortable that I now have the biggest mandate that this party's ever given.
See, if I were you, I would want Nigel Farage to go to America, because whatever you do, he will inevitably eclipse you because of what he is, Nigel Farage.
Yeah, but look, he wasn't Nigel Farage as you know him today 4 years ago. And he has built that profile and he's built that persona. And I've got to endeavour to do the same. And Nigel will help me in my way with doing this. He won't he won't be a bed blocker. He won't block me from doing the things that I want to do.
But will he be a backseat driver?
No, he won't be a backseat driver, and he knows that will not be the case. And of all of the candidates who was going to come in, I'm the one who is always going to be the most independent because I know the party inside out. I've worked with the grassroots for years. I've done every job within the party, bar the leadership. Now I'm the leader. I'll be my own man, and I'll take UKIP forward.
Do you know what the challenge that you've got over the next 4 years is? Because you didn't stand for the leadership before, did you? And there must have been a reason for that.
Well, I'll tell you straight. I've been campaigning for years. I came at this with Nigel in 2008 when UKIP was on 0% in the opinion polls, and with 12,000 members and falling, and we turned the whole thing around, and we dedicated our lives to building this party and ensuring that we got Brexit. After Brexit, both of us thought that we could hand it on to the next generation. That idea failed miserably, so one of us had to stand up or step in and ensure that it survived. And what convinced me to do this? It was the day when we had the shenanigans in the European Parliament when the two MEPs had an altercation and Stephen Wolfe collapsed on the bridge. And I wasn't in Strasbourg and I lead the MEPs, but I sat there at home just like a normal punter, literally with my head in my hands, and I felt as if the party which I'd helped grow from nothing, the party which I love, was beginning to fall to bits. And I felt I had a duty to step in and ensure that it survived.
You strike me as somebody a bit like the Speaker of the House of Commons who has to be dragged to the Speaker's chair. You are the reluctant leader, aren't you?
Well, do you know what? I would rather someone do something out of duty than out of ego. And I'm doing this because it's my duty to ensure that I take this party forward. I see it as my duty to hold the government's feet to the fire on Brexit. And I think we have fantastic opportunities on the political front in the years to come, particularly in those Labour constituencies.
Just another word about how you can sort of get votes from Labour. Several Labour MPs, Rachel Reeves, Chuka Umunna among them, recognise that they need to talk about immigration. Rachel Reeves has said we need to have some controls on immigration. You've got Diane Abbott saying exactly the opposite. And yet Diane Abbott has been representing a working class area of London all her life. How can you represent the people that she represents better than she does?
Who, Diane Abbott?
Yeah.
Well, look, it's horses for courses, isn't it? Different constituencies sign up to different things. And, there are a number of Labour constituencies right across the country where people feel very uncomfortable about the levels of immigration that we have into this country. But we're not just going to speak about immigration. We're going to speak, for example, about law and order. We're going to become the party of law and order. We're going to be the party that say that sentences should mean what they say. Okay? Because the people who are most affected by crime in this country are people who live in Labour working class communities, and quite frankly, they've had enough. And we're going to break out of this Westminster bubble, and we're going to become the party of common sense.
Are you going to become the party of the working class? Because when you look at UKIP conferences now, you look at the UKIP members, they do tend to be dominated by people who you could sort of see as previously conservative.
Yes, I think that's absolutely right. And I think that our membership structure precludes many working class people from joining UKIP. That is something that has to be changed. And we have a membership now of around 33,000 people. I envisage, and I hope, that I can turn that around, look at the membership structure, reduce the membership fee, and turn us into a working class movement. That's my ambition over the next 3 to 4 years, and I envisage that I can turn that 33,000 into 100,000.
And you can assure us that you're not going to let any spin doctors get to you and say, now, Paul, you need to moderate your accent a bit.
Well, do you know, I'll tell you what, I'll tell you a quick story before I get off. The party suggested I should go for elocution lessons back in 2008. They were told to get off then, and it isn't going to happen now, OK? I am, I'm never going to change.
As long as it was only get off. Paul Nuttall, thank you very much indeed. That's Paul Nuttall, the new leader of UKIP. 0345 6060 973. Do you think Paul Nuttall is well equipped to take on the Labour Party, not just in the north? This is LBC.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.